Chrysalis Chats. My name is Tanya, and this is where we talk about all things holistic wellness and radical environmental education, what you don't get taught in school. Today's topic is animal minds, specifically animal brains, and I'm so excited to introduce this to you. We're just going to do a little read-along here in National Geographic, and here's a really cool lizard. Do you see that? That might be a chameleon, for all I know. So we're just going to do a little read-along here, okay? What is up with animals' brains? Do animals think? That's the topic. For most of human history, the answer would have been emphatically affirmative. Pre-industrial cultures, whose lives were intertwined with the animals in their environment, almost universally regarded animals as thinking, feeling beings. It was an obvious common sense truth. Anthropomorphism is now considered a tool for making sense of other animals. They're not merely furred, feathered, or scaled versions of ourselves, but we share a common biological heritage, and that includes our brains. We live in a world of minds, only some of them are human. So that's kind of the first little summary statement of this. And basically, from that we can gather that for most of our history as human beings, animals were regarded as pretty much just like us. They were sentient, they had feelings, emotions, they could interact with each other and us. They gave us messages. Actually, if you've studied any of the shamanic lore or even just history really through the perspective of a native culture, native people will often depict animals as being not only living and feeling and communicating, but wise and deliverers of very important knowledge and concepts. So there's such a thing as a spirit animal, right, or a spirit guide, and that's when an animal, whether it be a bird or a fox or a raccoon or a bear, whatever the case may be, it's when an animal comes across your path and there's this divine understanding that they're there to help you on your journey and to show you a part of consciousness which you might not have previously been aware of or tuned into, whatever the case may be. But I also want to mention this other paragraph here. It says, it was easy to see intelligence in primates. After all, they're closely related to us. Acknowledging it in very different animals like a panther or a chameleon or a brown rat, it can be harder yet. The more we learn, the more they prove to be the same. So that is basically saying that, you can relate to a monkey because they kind of look like us, right? They're not so far in the biological web of interconnection. But if you look at a lizard, or you look at a dragonfly, or you look at a butterfly, right? Quintessential example, they're not necessarily the most relatable in terms of how they physically look or act with each other. But what it's saying is that with more and more research, it's actually becoming apparent that animals most definitely think and have, active mental states. So this is another brief summary. It says, with the help of ingenious experimental setups, researchers have now explored the mental abilities of hundreds of species. The results are often astounding. Chimpanzees and some monkeys can best college students on certain math problems. Say, what? That's true. Can you believe it? I know I can. Some dolphins use shells to catch fish, and it's not just these well-known creatures that display intelligence, but the whole menagerie. Tiny zebrafish can count too. Chickadees look at the future. Bees learn from one another, and even crickets weigh decisions. There are no limits to what can be measured in controlled there are limits. There are limits to what can be measured in controlled experimental settings, of course. Certain animals are difficult to study in captivity. Their wild lives may be far richer and more mentally challenging than anything scientists could devise. A grizzly bear, for example, may range over hundreds of square miles, moving between seasonal feeding grounds and demonstrating what clearly looks to be foresight and reasoning. Replicating that in a lab setting is unrealistic, though. For the record, some of their black bear cousins have demonstrated an uncanny ability to recognize pictures and understand abstract concepts. As the science of animal intelligence progresses, there's one thing we can all agree on. As much as we've learned, much more remains to be discovered. So, the summary of that and where I kind of floundered in the text is that basically when you're putting an animal or a series of animals, a select number of animals in a closed setting, and then you're trying to understand what their behaviors are, you're not going to understand it as well as when you're actually in the wilderness or in their native habitat observing what they're doing. But even in some things like bears, for example, some creatures, some beings like bears, you're going to see that they implement problem solving. They implement strategy, okay? Animals are intelligent. That is the takeaway of this. And I did want to bring forward this case study that they have in here of a very brainy bird. So it says, in 1977, chemistry student Irene Pepperberg purchased a year-old African gray parrot from a pet store. Pepperberg became a psychologist, and the parrot, whom she named Alex, altered the course of science. He learned more than 100 words and differentiated between shapes and colors. He didn't appear to mindlessly repeat what he heard, but understood it. Though other scientists were slow to accept Alex's intelligence, because he's a parrot, he set a precedent for entertaining the possibility that birds, once largely dismissed as, well, bird-brained, could be quite smart. Alex died in 2007. His last words delivered to Pepperberg were, "You be good, see you tomorrow, I love you." So right there you have an example of a bird who learned our vocabulary, our language, and they actually communicated with that new knowledge that was not previously embedded in them, right? Seeing as they were a bird. However, they could differentiate between color and different things that a non-brained individual might not be able to necessarily differentiate, okay? So that's just one example of animal intelligence. There's really so many. The last one I'll mention in this video is talking about earthworms, and earthworms are actually considered an animal. They're in the annelid family, so they're a very simple animal in the regard that they're a worm. However, Darwin, he actually studied them. It was one of his favorite kind of species to observe. And he observed that they actually showed mental characteristics similar to humans, not just physical anatomical characteristics. So one way that an earthworm would show anatomical similarities despite being an earthworm, something that does not look like a human at first glance, right, is that they have sexual organs just like us. The interesting thing about earthworms, not only does your average redworm wiggler, say, eat half of its body weight every single day, but earthworms in general are hermaphrodites, so they have both female and male sex organs, and how they reproduce is actually through this big orgy. And they're just like, if you open up a worm bin, they're just like all over each other, like having this crazy like Greek Roman ancient orgy type thing going on. But aside from that, he observed that not only their physical characteristics but their mental characteristics were reminiscent or comparable to a human's. So one of the things they talk about in this publication is that the earthworms were observed actually closing up an entryway into their dwelling area, and they utilized strategy and they utilized problem solving because they actually selected different shapes of leaf cuttings and different sizes of twigs and things of that sort, which would be better suited to the shapes that they encountered in the area that they were plugging. So there's some type of a mental faculty being applied in here, okay? And if you want to say that that's just instinct, at this point, fair enough. However, we're going to delve further in coming videos this week and really look at how it's not just instinct, but it's intelligence that animals are displaying for us. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This is day 1 of the 7-day vegan challenge. I challenge you to go vegan today for 7 days. Let me know how it's going for you if you're participating or if you're already vegan, and do reach out to us in the comments. Just let us know what you're thinking about eating today in this challenge. So what kinds of plants are you planning on ingesting? What kinds of strategies are you going to use to make sure that you're feeling fulfilled and happy and full, but also compassionate and plant-based in your journey, okay? So do let us know. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow Chrysalis Chats on Facebook. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. I'm also on Instagram. Check out Chrysalis Chats over there. And be sure to like this video and share it with all your friends who you feel would be into it. I appreciate you, and no matter where you are in your metamorphosis, whether you're a tiny little caterpillar or a full-fledged butterfly, I just want to say thank you, and you rock because you are part of the solution, not the problem. Have a great rest of your day.